In an ever-evolving digital landscape, for your business to thrive, you must adapt or die. Welcome to Marketing in the Age of AI, the podcast helping you harness the power of AI and marketing tools to revitalize and grow your business. And now here's your host, marketing expert and author of Authentic Marketing in the Age of AI, Emanuel Rose.
Welcome to this episode of Marketing in the Age of AI. And in this episode, we've got a chance to dig in deep in both fundamental design principles, strategic implementation, and the processes to evaluate and have the team test and look at new tools. Plus, we get to hear about some AI tools that are being developed by some really smart people. And today it's my pleasure to have on the show James Hipkin, who is really involved in all those things and so much more. I can't wait to see what we uncover today, James, thanks for joining.
Hey, Emanuel, it's my absolute pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation. This is exciting stuff.
Yeah, it sure is. It's interesting. Now, you've been building websites since about 2010. Is that accurate?
That's right. It's been I had an opportunity coming out of my last agency assignment where I was managing the digital budget for Toyota, and I had an opportunity to buy a vendor. And
nice.
I bought Red 8 Interactive, and it was a production studio. So I shifted its emphasis around to website design and development because the website is the most important digital asset that a business owns. Most of them are terrible.
Well, let's dig into that a little bit. What are some of the terrible things that you see about the average small business website?
Well, I'll tell you, I see the same thing over and over again. And that's an absence of strategy. The website suffers from what I call checkboxism. Okay. The business owner has been told, you need a website. So they go out and get their nephew to build them a website. And they point at the website and go, look, I have a website, check the box. And there you have something that's sitting off on its own without any connection to the business's customers or the business itself. It's just there. And that absence of strategy is what most small business websites suffer from. And it's the most important thing when it comes to creating an online doorway that's going to give value to your customers as well as to your business. It should be doing this for you. And if it's not, then the problem can probably be traced to an absence of strategy.
That's interesting. And I think we're probably seeing, in addition to that, now we're seeing that there's a lot of tools in general that are being instituted by businesses in this kind of rush of tools that also have an absence of strategy. Would you agree, James?
Oh, yeah. I see the same thing when I assess digital marketing campaigns. They've hired a social media agency who's industriously producing all kinds of content, on the various channels that they're supporting. That's pretty as all get out. Clever copy, executionally, I'll give them a benefit of the doubt. They're doing a good job. But they're not strategic, and typically the business owner's not strategic.
Right.
So the business owner looks at this stuff and goes, well, it looks nice. And it's just adding to the digital noise. Pretty does not equal strategy. You can have a pretty social media campaign that is also strategic, but in the absence of strategy, it's just more noise.
Yeah, right. It reminds me of that quote that says, "Don't confuse action with motion." Right?
Yes.
Or it's not necessarily connected. Well, we've got a chance to bring in your partner Jeff, and I would ask James that you would introduce Jeff for me and for the audience.
Absolutely. Hey, Jeff.
Hi, James. Hi, Emanuel. Great to
Hi.
meet you.
Great to meet you too.
Jeff is my partner in crime on a couple of the AI initiatives that we're working on. I won't even though I've known him for a couple of years now, I still cannot pronounce his last name. So I don't bother. I'll let him do that himself if he chooses to. And Jeff's background is I first met him. I worked with him as a ghostwriter for some of the content that I've created, but he has actually evolved himself into being quite an advanced prompt engineer.
Awesome.
It's in the prompt engineering piece of this that our relationship has continued to develop and blossom.
Love it. All right. Jeff, anything else you want to say about your background?
Yeah, thank you, James. I am just obsessively curious about the universe. So when AI came out, it was like being reunited with my long lost twin. And we reached singularity this week. I gave an answer to my wife. She didn't like the answer. We asked AI and it gave her the exact same answer.
Uh-oh. That's a little scary.
It had better punctuation, but my answer was identical other than that. So
it's kind of like a psychic Neuralink that you have with chat. Is that it, Jeff?
Absolutely. We were meant to work together, and I'm going to use the word augmented reality. Is, we are smarter if we use it right. So
love it. It's beautiful. Well, what I'd love to do is just to ask a couple of questions here, just philosophically, and then we'll move into some of the tools that you guys are working on, and the I guess the strategic development of those tools and where you're at. So how's that sound?
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, good. So I really would love to have two questions answered. One is how a small business owner or a small organization should look at making assessments of AI tools and how to develop an implementation plan. And then the second thing, Jeff, since we got you, we got to talk about prompt engineering and how to develop a process for prompt engineering where you can still maintain your humanity and have the prompt engineering feed that humanity. So take those first and second. How about that?
Well, great. I'll take the first one. The advice I'd give a business owner is think about AI tools in two buckets. There is the tactical problem solving bucket. That's where you can use AI tools to optimize and streamline mundane tasks.
Mm-hmm.
Optimize and streamline things that need to be better than they're being done, but don't need to be perfect. I'll give you an example.
Great.
We use content specialists to design and build websites for our Innately product, which is targeted at six-figure business owners. These are mostly stay-at-home moms. About 60% of them are military spouses. And they're not designers. We've trained them. They do a really good job. But the whole thing about color, what separates a professional website from an amateur website, oftentimes it's the use of color. And web designers use a concept that they've stolen from the interior design industry called the 60-30-10 color palette.
Yep.
Where 60% of the colors on the website are background colors, 30% of the colors on the website are the primary and secondary color, and then 10% is the accent color. In a website, it's usually the call to actions. In an interior design situation, this is why there's a red pillow on the sofa. Right?
Yep. Dimensionality. Yep.
I spent about a month working on a prompt with ChatGPT. If we put in one color hex code, it will spit out a complete color palette for a website based on that one color.
Interesting.
And it was an iterative process. I did my first go. I sent it off to a bunch of designers that I know. Quick little side note, and much to my wife's amazement, I've worked with a lot of people over the years, and for some strange reason, they like me. So I reach out and ask them to do things like this. These are top tier designers, right?
Yeah.
Working at Apple, working at major brands, that sort of thing. So they would give me feedback and I would work on the prompt some more and then I'd send it off again. And we went through this 3 or 4 times, this circular thing. At the end of it, the general consensus was, well, it's not as good as what I would probably do myself, but my God, it's 80% better than what most people can do.
Right, because most people don't have an intuition about this color palette that you're talking about. Yeah,
exactly. And they don't understand the concept behind the 60-30-10. So what we did is we took that practical solution and I had one of our developers build out a WordPress plugin, and this is now available on the repository as the AI color palette generator. So it's available to anybody using full site editing in a WordPress site. And that's an example of a practical, tactical application of AI.
So how would, say, a small legal shop implement a process like that in their marketing, James?
I think Jeff probably has some experience with that, right, Jeff?
Absolutely. So this will tie into what James and I are working on. But James and I come from a sales world, James from marketing, and we both have this little pet peeve that everybody is trying to sell something to everyone as their avatar. Right. And that was just when we had a few conversations. It doesn't work in sales. It doesn't work in marketing. And when you try to say I serve everyone, you ultimately serve no one.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So one of the things I figured out, and James and I are working on the product for it, is how to get a small local law firm, or I work with a lot of accounting firms, sit down and figure out exactly who you want to serve. And there are some cheats on how you can determine that. We use AI to get really, really clear to the point that you're writing detailed content. I'm Colby 4592, which means I'm high quick start. I really annoy accountants who are high fact finder.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that the language you use, everything attracts the avatar that you want to work with. And honestly, it should repel those that you don't.
Right.
And what I love about AI is if you're very, very specific on who you serve, you'll find them in droves.
Yep.
And so when we're looking at, which AI to pick, I tell people start with a GPT model, a written model, because it'll help you with your communication. And just even if you're not perfect at it, you can say, okay, my audience is middle-aged white guys who focus on innovation, and it'll tailor your content to that specific audience.
Sure.
Now, James and I are getting deeper into the psyche of that individual. But honestly, we both agree, I think, James, I'll let you comment on it, that having a bad avatar is better than having no avatar.
Sure.
So we're trying to help people get a better avatar. And, like James's color picking, it's not going to be as good as if James or I sat down and worked with them.
Sure.
But it's better than what they had yesterday.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, so in terms of a process, though, for the way that a small business would go around and decide how to dive in, right? Like, hey, everybody's talking about AI. I need to integrate it into my marketing. Where do we start and how do we start?
It starts with their current existing customers.
Yeah.
Most businesses, 80% of their revenue is coming from 20% of their customers.
Sure. Pareto's rule. Yeah.
They either subjectively understand who they are, or if they've got data, they may be able to objectively identify who their best customers are.
Yep.
If you interview your best customers and base your avatar on who your best customers are, and then craft your marketing as a result of that avatar, you're much more likely to attract more customers like your best customers.
Love it.
And this model, as simple as it is when I'm explaining it, it's still, people don't do it. They think that they're going to convince that good marketing is going to change somebody's need state. Not going to happen.
No.
The best marketing in the world is not going to change a consumer's need state. And that's true whether you're a lawyer, an accountant, a builder of widgets, a seller of services. Understand who your best customers are and craft an avatar based on who they are.
All right. Well, that's good. I like that. So we're going to start foundationally, which is there a market and who is the market for your product or service?
Exactly.
And you guys have found and figured out a process by which to speed up that avatar development. Is that correct?
That's what we're working on. But before we get into that, there's one other piece of this.
Yeah.
That while many businesses will tell you that they have an avatar, even if it's a bad one, they've got something. So it's not a terribly unique idea. When I follow up and ask them, so have you mapped the buyer's journey?
Right.
And this is where Jeff's sales background comes in and where my relationship marketing background comes in. The buyer's journey is not a static thing.
That's a good point. I love that.
It goes from you are not even a dot on their horizon.
Yep.
Through something happened in their life that caused them to start thinking about the category. That's the top of the funnel.
Yeah.
And then as they're moving through the journey, they're moving into the consideration phase. Well, I got to solve this problem. I wonder what my choices are. And there's a whole bunch of questions that revolve around that. And then they get deeper along the pathway and they're down into the prospecting stage where they've got, well, I've got 2 or 3 choices and I got to pick one of them. And then there's the decision phase. And each one of those phases in the journey requires different content, different approaches, different questions that need to be answered. The way they need to be answered needs to be different. The kind of content, media you're going to use is going to be different. Mapping that buyer's journey is the other half of the avatar. And when you bring the two together, it's a classic 1 + 1 = 3.
Love it. Because there's 4 different types of learning that happens in human beings, right? So you have to repurpose your content to match their learning style.
Exactly. And then you get into the different segments in your audience. And as Jeff was saying, like accountants have one style of investigation and Jeff has a different style.
Sure. Yep.
He needs to, if he doesn't know the accountants have that different style, he can't modify how he presents his ideas to them and it just won't be effective.
And what I'm seeing now and what the studies are showing is that in B2B purchasing, it's as much as 6 hours of research that a prospect is doing before they're making any kind of decision. And the other interesting thing is the first provider they call has an 84% chance to close that deal. Mm-hmm. So the speed to lead and the depth of content are 2 super critical things in our jobs.
Right. And also, when I was working in relationship marketing, we sponsored a large research study for a telecommunications company who was literally losing customers faster than they were gaining customers. Okay. And we did this research study on loyalty in the long distance calling category. This is back pre-cell phone days.
There was no loyalty in those days.
And the researcher was standing in front of the audience. I don't remember any of the details from the readout, but I remember one sentence that he said. This is a guy who specializes in loyalty research. And he said, 90% of loyalty problems can be traced to a flawed sales process. Mm. And this is where mapping the buyer's journey becomes so important, because not only does it make your marketing more effective by drawing people along, you're building trust along the way. You're building relationship along the way.
Right.
When they make the purchase, it's not a sale. It's the next logical step in their journey.
Right. I love it.
And that makes them much more likely to buy again, because remember, another old marketing axiom, right? The most important sale is not the first sale.
Right.
It's the second.
Yep. And then that whole idea of them becoming advocates and referring and all those things that happen down the line as well.
And willingness to buy more products and services from the company. There are 5 ways that loyal customers bring value to a business.
Well, let's see. I got upsell, cross-sell, institutionalize. What are the other 2?
Well, there's The longer they're with you, the better return on investment you're getting from the initial acquisition
Absolutely.
cost.
Yeah, for sure.
The longer they're with you, the more likely they are to buy other products and services with you.
Yeah, sure.
The longer they're with you, the more likely they are to pay full price. They know your value proposition.
Right.
The longer they're with you, the less expensive they are to service
Sure.
because they understand how things work.
Yep.
And then the longer they're with you, the more likely they are to advocate for you and bring in other customers just like them.
That's beautiful. Yeah. All right. Well, so I love that. So we got developing an avatar, and then we have the customer journey, and we'll call it customer retention is a big part of that customer journey.
Exactly. Because in the journey map, the purchase is not the end of the journey. It's about 2/3 of the way through.
Yeah, love it.
If it's done well.
Well, yeah. So that's an important philosophical shift that a small business owner can make in terms of how they're picturing A, their marketing, and B, the customer acquisition and retention.
Exactly.
Very powerful. Well, so we'll move on into this idea of the prompt writing, Jeff, and kind of your three biggest gifts that you could give to somebody listening to this show who's just figuring out how to manage the AI tools.
Great. Excuse me. Great question. Number one, first thing I would say is follow an iterative process. Way too many people log into their favorite AI, sit down and say, hey, AI, give me this. And if you give bad instructions, just think about, if you have a teenage kid and you tell them to, go mow the lawn. Well, there's different degrees of mowing the lawn. So first things first, don't ever just spit it out and hope for the best the first time. You're the adult here. So number one, your job is to ask it questions, get it to give you a better answer. You give it critiques, you give it commentary, but definitely the more context you give it, the better your result. So I know people that'll say, hey, write me a blog post on marketing. And James probably sees those all the time. They're about this valuable in terms of the grand scheme of things because they're so generic, so vague. But you would never do that with an employee. You would never do it with a kid. Why would you do it with an AI model? So my first piece of advice, I don't get to the good stuff until about the sixth conversation or sixth question in. So that's number one. Don't take the first thing it gives you.
Like it.
Number two, give it a lot of parameters. So I always assign it a role. Here's the role you're playing.
Yep.
I'll give it an objective of here's what I'm trying to get to. I'll give it some advice on the format or style. And coming back to what we've already discussed, here's the audience I'm writing it for.
Right.
And if you don't believe me, by the way, there's a bunch of other things. I like to give it examples and things like that. But if you don't believe me, just try writing a prompt to generate a LinkedIn post and then come back and say, please rewrite this knowing my audience is X.
Yep.
And the difference between the two is day and night. And the third piece of advice, less is more. I know people, and James knows this, I was that guy. It's like, ooh, I want to learn everything. There's a few thousand AI apps out there today, and I feel like that number doubles every day.
I agree.
My advice to everybody is pick one that solves a problem in your life well. And I always start with where do you spend the most time in a week, what you hate, that you could then offload. And once you've gained 5 hours of your life back, then maybe see if you need a second or third one. But honestly, less is more. And the best tool for you is the one that you know how to use inside out and sideways. So early on, I just committed and I said, I hope I picked the right one. I'm just going to learn everything I can about ChatGPT.
Yep.
Now, luckily, that applies to Gemini and Claude and Copilot, etc. But find the one that solves your biggest pain in life and get good at it. And once you've got the free time, then you can go play with other ones.
Love that. And just for some context, about how much time do you spend building a prompt from beginning to end that gives you something that's valuable to you, Jeff?
How much time does Jeff spend, or how much time should people spend? I've spent a week building a prompt because it was a big prompt. The project James and I are working on, I'm probably about 2 weeks into, and for the record, it's not a prompt, it's a series of prompts.
Right.
But usually for most people, I would say that the time you spend on a prompt, you will get back tenfold later. Whereas if you don't spend, if it's garbage in, garbage out. So I have a prompt template that I always start with.
Yeah.
And it reminds me to provide the objective, and it provides the feedback. But basically, if you do it right, it'll take you 2-3 minutes, and it'll save you 3, 4, 5 hours down the road.
Love it. And if somebody wanted to buy that template from you, how would they get a hold of you to do that?
That's a great question, and I wish I had a great answer, but I give it away for free. So if people want it, it's on my YouTube channel. I'll give you the link you can share.
Yeah, perfect.
I am tired of watching. I'm really passionate, as is James. I've seen small businesses fail because they didn't know what to do, or worse, they took bad advice, hoped for the best, and failed. So I committed when I started exploring ChatGPT, I'm going to share a lot of the things I learned on my own, so that the solopreneurs and the micro companies, they can at least get an advantage. So I'll even send it to you for your show notes. You can put it wherever you want. But
appreciate that.
I believe with AI, if we share this knowledge, that humanity is better for it. But I will also say that in the hands of a novice, you're not going to get the same results I get, but you'll get better results than if you didn't do it.
Well, I appreciate the largesse and your support of small business. So I want to be grateful to that, and we're all in the same feeling for that. And the second part is that, yeah, I think that's what the beauty of AI is it provides us a step up for something that we don't have any idea of how to accomplish, right? It gives us something to start with, and that's what I really love about it. And this idea where I can go and say, put in my one of my books and say, develop a content calendar for me for the next 12 months for one post a week on LinkedIn, and it sends back 60% good ideas, and it's like, wow, that saved me a lot of time. I love that. And I can then get iterative with it.
At full disclosure, 40%, not so good.
Right.
But it's still better than staring at a blank page going, holy crap, I'm going to go check the laundry or do something else because I got writer's block. So
that's an important point, that AI is like having a super smart intern at your disposal.
Yep.
And but it's completely objective.
Right.
It doesn't have your baggage.
Right.
It's going to think of things that as soon as you see them, you go, oh my, I should have thought of that.
Yeah. Right.
Right. I'll ask, I'll use it to structure a blog post, and I'll give it follow the same model that Jeff is talking about. And I'll ask it for like a structural outline, define who the audience is, et cetera, et cetera. I'll train the AI by giving it excerpts from existing writing of mine. So it understands my writing style. It understands all that kind of good stuff. And then it comes back with a structure for this blog post. And almost invariably, there's something in there that I went, oh, right. That. Right. And that's where it brings that objectivity. Now you still have to do the work, right? It really doesn't save me any time writing a blog post, but I think I get better blog posts as a result because they're more complete.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that's an amazing part of it. And there's levers, there's time savers that I found, but I agree that it is 60-70% work and that you spend your time combing through it, and then continually to input the human spark into it.
And that's the other half of the question you asked earlier about, and I said there are two areas where a business owner can use it. We talked about the tactical.
Right.
Now we're talking about the strategic.
Yeah.
Where you're using it as a strategic partner to help you create value more efficiently and more effectively, because it's bringing that objective third-party perspective and allowing you to spend less time on the sort of journeyman structural stuff,
Right.
and more time on the creating content that's going to create value.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard it described as it's as if you're training a new staff person, and treat it like a staff person, and that you're imbuing it with philosophy and strategy and tactics, and then managing it versus just turning it loose. Well, good. Anything else to close out that section? No. All right. Good. I love it. Very, very, very nice and succinct and clear action plan, which is amazing. I'd love to hear, just in any order, just a little bit more about the tools that you're creating, and what they're called, and what their intended outcomes are.
I guess I'll go. I mean, what the avatar and journey map that we talked about is such a powerful thing, but the traditional models on how these things are developed, when I was working with big brands with big multi-seven-figure budgets, we'd regularly spend $50,000 with a research company to build out the avatar and journey map for a customer segment. That's out of reach for most six-figure business owners.
Sure.
However, having that tool is so powerful. So we're partnering with a third person who was a very experienced market researcher in San Francisco, a woman I've worked with off and on for more years than she wants me to talk about. And she is developing an interview guide that we're using, and we will make available to small business owners so that they can reach out and find their best customers, do the interviews themselves, record those interviews, and then put the recordings into our model. We're building we build websites. It's our day-to-day. That's our day job. So we've got developers. We're going to build out a specific website for this, where they'll log in, they'll put down the recordings, and then the model will transcribe the recordings into text and then analyze the recordings and it's not just machine learning. It moves up into inference and sort of draw thoughts out of the idea. And then we'll be able to spit out an avatar that describes their best customer in terms of demographics, their characteristics, the pain they're struggling with, and then the journey map. What got them thinking about it in the first place?
Yep.
How did they go about the research process? What were the important factors when they were doing their prospecting? And then what were the important factors when they were making their decision? And we're going to be able to pull all of that out. And because when I look at, we talked about this before about, you hire a social media agency and they're producing lots and lots of pretty noise.
Yep.
Because they aren't terribly strategic, and the business owner, this is not their world. They run a factory, or they run a store, or whatever it is they're doing. Or it's a law firm or an accounting firm. With the avatar and the journey map, they will then have the strategic foundation that they can give to the social media agencies. And this is the kind of people we're trying to talk to. These are the things that are important. They're very confident. So it speaks to language. It speaks to design. It informs so many people. It informs them in so many ways that it's going to be very powerful. So that's the product that we're developing.
Well, that's an amazing concept and a great use of the tools and the AI tools. So I'm excited to experience that and see how that translates into marketing.
Right. And they're also getting access to my brain and to Susan's brain and to Jeff's brain by virtue of we're building and refining this thing. We're doing beta testing right now. And, it's the same iterative process that I described for the color palette generator, right? We feed in data, we get out output, we look at the output. Wow, that could be better this way, this way, this way, fine tune, fine tune, fine tune. So they're getting access to my 40 years of experience in high-end marketing and advertising, and Jeff's experience, and Susan also is in that same realm of 30 to 40 years of high-end work.
Yeah. Well, no, there's a massive leverage in there, and there's a very nice map that you're creating for somebody to be able to follow, and then gives a really clear process for content creation.
Exactly.
Right?
That's the goal.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, good. So that you've got that going, and when we have a release date that you're looking at, when people are to be able to sign up on a website and get it going.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say sometime in August.
Yeah, gotcha.
But
which means September, October, probably.
Well, there may be a beta program launched in August that, at a discounted price while we're still working some of the kinks out.
Nice.
It sounds like a pretty simple idea. There's a lot of moving parts underneath it.
Of course.
That we want to make it very easy for the business owner. We want the business owner to get great value out of it. And that's going to take some trial and error.
Well, good. I'd love to have you back later in the year when you guys have got it live and talk about it in depth and look at some examples. So,
hey, we could do one live.
Oh, that would be a lot of fun. That would be geeking out on marketing in the age of AI. I love it. I'll take you up on that, James.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's good. And then so you've also got your color process that you're working on as a tool also.
Yeah, that already exists. It's in the WordPress repository. It's in the plugin repository.
And is that under the Innately brand, or how does somebody track that down?
It's under a Red 8 Interactive.
Okay.
But if you just go to the WordPress repository, the plugins, and you do a search for AI color palette, it's the only one. So
yeah, nice. You've owned that category.
Yeah, well, for the moment anyway. It's like owning a sliver, but.
Any other super secret software that you're developing with AI?
Well, this is not marketing, but I occasionally get, like I was saying before, this never ceases to amaze. My wife is always amazed that people do this, but I keep getting called in, and I work as a fractional CMO, usually with startups who can't afford full-time but need access to somebody who's been there, done that.
Yeah.
And I'm working with a group of senior C-suite level executives who are building a solution for multi-seven-figure businesses. The challenge with multi-seven-figure businesses, they had the heady growth days that they were very successful. They were growing, 20%, 30% year over year. So exciting. And then they reached a plateau.
Sure.
They started to bring in HR departments and structure and legal and compliance and all kinds of things and suddenly they're stopped growing. So how do they get back to those halcyon days?
Yeah.
And it's our premise that talent is the key to it.
Okay.
Hiring the right people and promoting the right people. Putting them in a structure that's conducive to growth and to innovation.
Right.
And giving them the systems and processes to actually be able to take that innovation and integrate it back into the organization. And the classic best example of that is Amazon. And what Amazon's been able to do from we sell books online to being one of the largest corporations in the world.
Right. Yeah.
By constantly innovating and then knowing how to put that innovation back into their company. So that model is going to rely heavily because we feel that there's an awful lot of the existing practices are not smart.
That's for sure.
Reviewing resumes. Having a common interview guide that looks at emotional intelligence and comfort with complexity, a lot of these softer but still extremely important metrics that an employee, either somebody you're hiring or somebody you're thinking about promoting, you need to understand.
Right.
And do they have good judgment? Do they make good decisions?
Right.
And we're using AI and language models in partnership with a company in Silicon Valley he's a very senior executive. He's had 4 successful IPOs, and many people consider him the father of AI. He wrote his PhD thesis on machine learning at Drucker, and he's the same age as me. So he's been doing this for a long time.
He got out ahead of that curve, didn't he?
Yep. And so we're using AI to bring smart to a lot of these talent management processes.
Interesting.
The concept of job descriptions. Hey, we need to fill a position. Quick, go to the hard drive, find an old job description,
Right.
change a couple words around.
Yeah.
No, we're developing a whole process that will take interviews with people and craft using AI to transcribe the interviews, and then the learning and the teaching we're going to be giving it, and to generate a job description, a smart job description that captures the technical essence of the job, but also the level of complexity, emotional, how many other people are they going to have to work with, emotional EQ, all these things are going to be built into these job descriptions. And then the job descriptions inform the recruiting process.
Wow. Well, that sounds like an amazing tool also, and an interesting application into making the HR and some of those administrative processes functional for growth rather than just the brick wall that they tend to be now.
Well, and that's a good example of the shift from using machine learning as a tactical tool to using it as a strategic tool.
Right.
There are already people using AI to assess resumes.
Sure.
But they're using that AI on a purely tactical level. Yeah. There's no strategic input being put into it. That's where the smart job description becomes a strategic element that has been also generated by using the ability of AI to analyze transcripts.
Right. Well, I love it. I think those are all of those examples are very high level, great applications of the tool, and using it to, like Jeff said earlier, to augment instead of replace. And I applaud the work that you guys are doing, and I truly appreciate you spending this much time with me and having this conversation.
Well, it's our pleasure.
Yeah. Let's see. So yeah, just so we know, how do we get in touch with you if we want to have another conversation?
Well, for me, if they go to vipchatwithjames.com, they can book a few minutes on my calendar, and I'd love to chat about marketing, AI, food, life, whatever makes them happy.
I love it. All right. And Jeff, you got to say your last name for us just once.
Sure. So for the record, I recognize it's hard to spell, hard to say, but it's Borschowa. So anybody who wants to connect with me, the best place is LinkedIn. I am there 24/7 almost, not quite, but I do sleep occasionally. And I'll send you the link, Emanuel, so they don't have to try spelling my name.
Thank you.
I promise it's very simple, but it's not as easy as Rose or Hipkin. I also promise that.
It's like Naheem and a Jaw from the movie, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Naheem and a Jaw.
It's easy. I learned how to spell it when I was about 8, so
Yeah, right. Well, my godfather's last name's Stavrianidakis. So how would you like to have written that one out in longhand?
Not a lot, no.
Well, guys, thank you very much again for your time, and I appreciate it. We'll make sure that everybody has a chance to get in touch with you in the show notes. And I hope you have a great day and a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Marketing in the Age of AI. Be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss a future episode. Your copy of Authentic Marketing in the Age of AI is available at Amazon.com or EmanuelRose.com. You can also connect with Emanuel on LinkedIn. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.